You are listening to the I Choose My Best Life podcast with Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith, a show that is dedicated to helping you live fully, love boldly, and rest intentionally. For additional resources, visit ichoosemybestlife.com.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Saundra, and you're listening to I Choose My Best Life. Today, we're wrapping up our mid-year reset series. Over the past 3 weeks, we've spent time asking some important questions, like, is the life you're building still the life you want? What are you carrying that no longer belongs in this season? And where is your energy actually going? And my hope is that through these conversations, you've gained something many people never allow themselves to receive, and that is moments of self-awareness, because that awareness can change everything. You can't change what you refuse to acknowledge. You can't really heal what you refuse to notice. And you can't realign a life that you never stopped long enough to evaluate. As I thought about how to close this series, I kept coming back to a pattern I see over and over again. Each year around the middle of the year, people begin looking for new plans. They want the new strategy for the continuation of their year. Maybe the first half hasn't turned out exactly the way that you wanted. So now you set new goals and you have a new productivity tool or a new system that you're going to put into place. And while there is nothing wrong with goals, I think many of us are solving the wrong problem, because the issue is rarely a lack of information. Most of us already know what we need to do. We know that we need better boundaries, and that we need more rest, or that we need to move our bodies, or to spend time with the people we love, separate from times with our screens. We need to make space in our lives for God or for healthier habits. So the challenge isn't information. The challenge is often the implementation of that information. And implementation becomes difficult when you're exhausted. I often think about this as a physician. Imagine someone comes into the office and tells me they're exhausted all the time. They can't focus, or maybe they just have no energy. They're struggling to make it through the day. Now imagine I respond by handing them a more complicated schedule, a bigger to-do list, or more demanding plan. That wouldn't make any sense, because before we discuss performance, we must first discuss their capacity. Before we look at the output, we have to discuss what reserves and resources are available to go into the solution. Yet that's where a lot of times we go with ourselves. We're exhausted, and then we solve the exhaustion by pulling in a solution that's requiring us to demand even more, push even harder, and ultimately become more overwhelmed. And then we wonder why nothing changes. One of the most powerful scriptures related to this is found in Isaiah 30:15. It says, "In returning and rest you shall be saved, and quietness and trust shall be your strength." And then it finishes with, "But you would have none of it." I find that verse fascinating, because most of us expect strength to come from effort. But God says strength comes from trust. We expect strength to come from pushing. But God says strength comes from returning. We look to strength to come from doing more. But God says strength comes from rest. That is a completely different way of thinking, and perhaps that's what some of us need as we enter into the second half of the year. Not a new strategy, but a new way of thinking. Because many of us are living at a pace our soul was never designed to sustain. We move quickly. We love to accomplish things. We're checking off the boxes, meeting the deadlines. Yet somewhere deep inside, we know something feels off. And on the outside, maybe everything looks very successful, but we see the impact. We see the impact on our health. We see the impact on our relationships. It's affecting our joy, our ability to hear God. It changes how we are in our day-to-day life if we're present with our family. We can't notice and have gratitude for the blessings around us. We rush. We rush past all of these things And rushing creates a life where we're always moving, but rarely beholding, rarely arriving, and oftentimes rarely satisfied. I remember the season in my own life when I found myself constantly in this rushing to the next project, the next speaking engagement, the next booklet deadline. And one day I realized something. I was living in the future while missing my life in the present. I wasn't unhappy. I was unavailable. Unavailable to fully experience the season I was actually living. And I think that when we understand what I'm describing here, it can be really powerful because oftentimes we spend so much time preparing for tomorrow that we never fully inhabit and abide in today. We're always getting ready for the blessing, always getting ready to enjoy life when, getting ready to get to the place where we can rest deeply and engage more with our lives. But the moment never really arrives because the pace never changes. We're moving, we're keeping up with everybody else, we're doing all the things, we're checking off the boxes. And that's why I believe the invitation for many of us in this middle of the year isn't a new plan, but a new pace. Because our pace determines what we have the capacity to sustain. Anyone can sprint for a short period. Even I, who says, if you see me running, something's chasing me. I can do a short quarter-mile jog. The question isn't if I can do it for a short period. The question is whether I can continue. Can your relationships continue at the pace? Can your health continue at this pace? Can your emotional well-being continue at this pace? Your spiritual life, can it continue at the pace you're currently at? And for some, it's a pace that can't be sustained. And that pressure to try to sustain it then becomes its own burden and can lead to burnout and all sorts of health-related concerns. One of the things I admire most about farmers is that they understand something our culture has forgotten. And that's that all things in its season. Growth has seasons. You can't harvest year round. You can't plant and produce year round. The land itself requires a pace, and we call those paces seasons. Yet many of us, we expect our lives to have harvest without having seasonal paces. We want to always be in the producing role or the creating and giving and pouring out, but we never make space for the pace of replenishing, the pace of receiving and restoring. And eventually, the soil of our life gets depleted. Just as in the natural, the soil can get depleted, so it can in us. I think one reason so many of us struggle is because we keep trying to start over. We start over constantly throughout the year. January is a start over. For some, every Monday is a start over. Maybe for you, you're one of the people who on your birthday, that's like a line in the sand, start over. We tell ourselves that this time will be different because there's this marker that we're going to start over. This time I'll do it. I'll be consistent. I'll follow through. I'll be faithful to the process. And for a little while, we may be motivated long enough to get it done. We're committed for a short period. Then life happens. Our schedules get busy. An unexpected challenge may arise. After that, our energy levels drop, priorities shift, and before long, we're frustrated with ourselves all over again. The problem is that we try to change our behaviors without addressing our identity, the deeper level of issue that is feeding some of this. We focus on what we want to do rather than who we want to become. And that's a very different conversation. Our behavior and habits ask, what do I need to accomplish? But an identity shift asks questions like, who am I becoming? Your behavior and habits may lead you towards, what are your goals? When identity will lead you toward, what kind of person am I cultivating? where identity will lead you towards what kind of person am I cultivating? Behavior focuses on outcomes, where identity focuses on a deeper formation. And lasting transformation almost always begins with identity. I think that's one reason scripture speaks so often about renewal. For example, Romans 12 tells us to be transformed by the renewing of our mind, not merely by changing our habits or improving our routines, but renewal. Transformation like this begins on the inside, and it becomes then visible on the outside. You can't change your life while keeping the same mindset, the same assumptions, patterns, and beliefs, or even the same pace. Eventually, the external change will be required for there to be an internal renewal to occur. So I want to ask you a question. As we've done the past 3 sessions, ask yourself, as you think about the second half of this year, who are you becoming? Because when December arrives, your greatest achievement may not be something you completed. It may be who you have become. Are you becoming more patient? Maybe more peaceful or present in your day-to-day life? For some of you, maybe you're becoming more grounded and aligned. For some, maybe you're becoming more courageous. Before we continue, I want to take a moment to share a resource that connects directly to what we've been discussing throughout this series. And it's a resource that I launched at the beginning of June. It's called the Rest Recovery Blueprint. And one of the reasons I created it is because so many people I know need change, but they're trying to create change from a place of depletion. And recovery isn't simply about feeling less tired. It's about restoring your capacity so you can build a sustainable life, a life supported by healthy rhythms, intentional restoration, and really a deeper understanding of what truly fuels your well-being. If this mid-year reset series has resonated with you, you'll find information about the Rest Recovery Blueprint in the show notes. It's still not too late to jump right in. We are in mid-swing and all of the resources are available for you, so you have not missed a thing. Join us and you can check out the details in the show notes. Now let's continue. One of the most important lessons I've learned is that goals may inspire us, but rhythm is what sustains us. Think about that. Yes, goals are important. I have goals, you have goals, but goals have an expiration date. Eventually, you either achieve them or you don't. Rhythms are different. Rhythms become part of your life. A goal may be to improve your health. A rhythm is taking a walk every day. A goal for you might be to deepen your faith. A rhythm is having a dedicated time with God that you do consistently. For some, a goal may be to strengthen your marriage or your relationship. But the rhythm that will sustain that are regular conversations with your spouse. Rhythms are powerful because they support the person you're becoming. And often when what we need isn't another goal, and often what we need isn't another goal, it's a healthier, sustainable rhythm. A rhythm that supports the life we actually want and one that leads us to greater levels of health and well-being. I think that's one of the gifts of the mid-year point. It's an opportunity to pause and to ask yourself, what rhythms are shaping my life right now? Are they creating the life that I really desire, or are they creating a life I never intentionally chose? Because whether we realize it or not, our daily patterns are quietly writing our future. Every day we are becoming someone. The question is whether we are becoming intentionally or are we becoming accidentally? As we begin moving toward the close of the series, I want to guide you through a simple reflection exercise. If you're driving, simply listen. If you're sitting somewhere quiet, you may want to jot these down. Imagine it's the end of the year. December has arrived. You're looking back over the past 6 months. What would make you most proud? Would you be proud that you accomplished more? Perhaps. But I suspect for many people listening, the answer gets deeper than that. Maybe you'd be proud that you finally established a boundary with that person that you've allowed to walk all over your feelings. Maybe you'd be proud that you took your health seriously, not about the number on the scale, but more about the longevity in your years. Maybe you'll be proud that you became more emotionally honest, or that you learned how to rest without guilt. For some of you, maybe you'll be proud that you spent more time with your kids or your grandkids, or that you stopped carrying some of their burdens that were never yours to carry in the first place. Or maybe you're going to be more proud that you trusted God more and tried to control less. Those are the kinds of victories that change us. Now, let me ask you another question. What is one thing you need to release before the end of the year? Just one. One burden, one unhealthy responsibility, one expectation, maybe it's one outdated identity. One thing. One thing that no longer belongs in this season of your life. Then ask yourself, what is one thing worth protecting? Is there a relationship? Maybe a value? Maybe for some of you, it's an area of growth. Sometimes transformation isn't about adding more, but rather protecting the things that you've allowed to slip. Then finally, ask yourself this final question. What is one thing worth trusting God with? Because every one of us has something we've been trying to manage through our own strength. That thing that you have been worrying about, trying to control on your own. So the invitation in this mid-year is not to put forth greater effort, but release with greater abandon. As we close out this mid-year reset series, I want to return to where we started, with really a moment of self-awareness. See, over these 4 episodes, we've examined our lives, we've looked at our burden, our energy, and now we're looking at our pace. But self-awareness is what's at the center of it all, because awareness creates the opportunity for that change. And I hope that what you've discovered is this. You don't need to become an entirely different person, nor do you need to reinvent yourself or start over or get the perfect plan or the perfect strategy. You simply need the courage to take the next right step. One healthy choice, one new boundary, or even one act of trust. That's how transformation happens. One faithful step at a time. And perhaps that's exactly how God intended it for each of us. Not so we would depend on our own strength, but so we would learn to walk with Him in the day-to-day. As we end our time together, I want to leave you with this one final scripture from Psalm 23. And it says, He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. Notice where the restoration occurs. It's found simply in the following His lead and receiving His restoration. To walk at the pace of the grace of God, to trust that God is more interested in our formation into who He's called us to be than our performance and outward output. And to really believe that a well-lived life is built one faithful step at a time. Thank you for joining me through this mid-year reset series. We will be back to our interview style that we do throughout the year with a new guest at our next episode. And as you move into the second half of the year, ask yourself, What's the next right step toward the life I truly want to live? Because here, the goal is to really choose your best life. Until next time, live fully, love boldly, and rest intentionally. How can you keep your energy, happiness, creativity, and relationships fresh and thriving in the midst of never-ending family demands, career pressures, and the stress of everyday life? Learn about best-selling book Sacred Rest and discover the 7 types of rest you need most by visiting restquiz.com.